One of the things I'm trying to do in our services, in the crusades, is to bring the gospel of our Savior Jesus Christ to every man, woman, and child who come to hear us. And I'm reading today from the book of Psalms, chapter 92, verse 12. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. May God add His blessing to the reading of His holy word. I want to speak to you today on the subject, the palm tree Christian. The most famous tree mentioned in the Bible is the palm tree. It is the tree that has the characteristics like those of the child of God. I am told by those in the East that it is the most useful tree in the desert. Millions of people go to it daily for their food. The leaf of the fiber of its leaf stem is used for rope and rigging, and the tall trunk is used for timber. As a matter of fact, it has more than 350 different uses. David says that the righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. Now, how is the palm tree like the child of God? First, the palm tree flourishes in the desert, and it grows under the most adverse circumstances. Out there in the waterless desert, where tons of sand pile up against it, it flourishes. As a lonely sentinel, standing tall and straight, lifting its leaves toward the sky. How can it flourish? How can it live? It flourishes there in the desert because it does not receive its life from the desert. It goes deep with its roots into the well springs of the deep earth, and there it draws its life and sustenance. And that's the way it is with the child of God. He's in the world, but he's not of the world. He receives his life from God. His roots are in heaven. His name is written there. He is connected with God. That's where his life comes from. Then I'm told that the palm tree grows best when weighted down. Look at it out there, a palm tree like this. The shifting sands of the desert have piled up around it, sometimes 20 or 30 feet high. There's all kinds of debris to weight it down, and yet it grows best when weighted down. It produces the sweetest fruit, and the fruit of this type of tree is at a premium in the Near East. And when I talk about the palm tree being weighted down and growing best under its terrific weights, I'm thinking about Paul and his thorn in the flesh. You know, this old demon that was in people, wherever Paul went, stirred up the people against him, and they persecuted him. They threw him into prison. They never let him relax or have any rest in body and mind. One day Paul cried, "Oh God, take this thorn in the flesh away from me." There was no answer. The second time, the third time, Paul begged God. But God said, "No, Paul, in your weakness my strength is made perfect." And under the weight, like the palm tree, Paul began to produce the sweet fruit of a Christian. He wrote more books of the Bible. He traveled more missionary miles. He established more churches, won more souls, brought more healing to sick people than any man who ever lived in this world. He grew best when weighted down. Oh, the trials and problems of this world. When suddenly things are swept out from under us, we feel so lonely and afraid, weighted down by the problems, the cares of this world. That's when the true Christian shows the kind of person he is, because he goes to God and God comes to him, and they embrace each other. And the Christian takes the strength of God, and in his weakness, God's strength is made perfect. Then we're told that the palm tree grows in all directions. As a matter of fact, the roots of different palm trees interlock, and in time they produce other palm trees. This is like Christian people. They produce, they win souls, You remember when Jesus went fishing with the disciples and gave them the great catch that when they came back, Peter fell on the sandbar and said, Lord, depart from me, for I'm a sinful man. Jesus said, no, you follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. This is the aim of every child of God, to win another soul, to win his children, to bring them to Christ, to bring other friends and neighbors to Christ. Its roots grow in all directions. Then the palm tree grows tall and straight. Its trunk is not crooked and ugly. I think the first thing that a Christian does is to be honest, to pay his debts, not to go around leaving unpaid bills. If he's unable to pay one, he goes to the individual, explains the circumstances, and says, now, I'm going to pay this, and he makes every effort within his power to do it. He grows tall and straight and clean before God. His word is his bond, and men have confidence in what he says. He grows tall and straight. A palm tree cannot be grafted. Other trees can. But if you attempt to graft a palm tree, it dies, and so does a Christian. He cannot be grafted into this world. He's in the world, but he's not a part of the world. He cannot be like the world, because if he does, the experience he has with his God dies. And then there's something about a palm tree that I found out when I was over in the East, looking at some of these great trees. A palm tree is an evergreen, and it grows all its life. It grows winter and summer, cold and hot, seasons good and bad. It's always an evergreen, and it grows until it dies. You think of it. This tree, as it grows old, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years old and more, it grows until it dies. It never stops growing. All its life, it gets taller and broader and stronger. It's like a river that starts as a little tiny stream or spring in the mountains and gets wider and deeper and bigger and stronger until it empties into the ocean. And it grows all its life. And a real Christian grows all his life. He never stops spreading out, reaching upward, using his testimony, praying, living close to God. I think of my mother and father today. My father is about 80. My mother's about 75, nearly 76. They led me to Christ when I was a young man. And today, they have the sweetest testimony. As they grow older, they grow near God. I was told about a mother, a real Christian mother, who kept growing closer to God as she kept getting older. And she had led her daughter to Christ, but had been unsuccessful in leading her son to the Lord. And in her 80s, she came down to die. And there on her deathbed, she began to testify and to tell people how sweet the Lord was in her life. And the boy wondered. He talked to the girl about her. Now, what will happen when Mother dies? And the girl said, don't worry. She'll be in the hands of God. The mother seemed to discern what they were saying, and she called him to her bedside, and she said, now look, when I go to cross over, if I still feel the presence of God, I'll press your hands. And the day she was dying, the daughter was on one side of the bed and the son on the other, and she held their hands. And she was talking to them and testifying, and suddenly her body trembled and began to stiffen. And in that moment, the girl on one side cried out, she's pressing my hand. She's pressing my hand. And on the other side, the boy with tears streaming down his cheeks said, yes, thank God, she's pressing mine. I think a Christian, real Christian, grows until he dies. David said that the palm tree flourishes, that the child of God is like the palm tree, it flourishes. And here's what I want to say. I know nothing so important as what I'm about to say now. The palm tree is completely victorious over the world in which it lives. Standing out there, lonely, but tall and straight, amidst the shifting sands of the desert, of the waterless desert. Its roots dig into the deep earth and takes strength and life from the water. Standing out there, it's completely victorious. I think if there's any word in this world that characterizes a true follower of God, it is victory. He's victorious. We are more than conquerors, Paul said. More, not just conquerors, but more than conquerors. I never was so glad in my life that I'm a Christian, a born-again Christian. And I urge you to take Christ into your life. If you've once known him and you've grown cold, to become victorious again, to take Christ into your soul, and to let your roots go deep into God, and high into heaven, and wide into his arms.